These fuzzy spots on this cactus will all turn into flowers. Each one of these fuzzy spots will be their own bloom and push out a huge, phenomenal flower. To ensure that your cactus actually produces a flower from each one of these buds, there's a few things that you need to do to make sure that they don't just dry out and die and just fall off of your cactus and not produce anything at all. So one thing you need to do is actually water your cactus and make sure that it's receiving enough moisture that it stays hydrated and fat. Now, in the wild or a native environment, your cactus would be receiving a bunch of rain, and that would help it ensure that each one of these became strong enough to produce flowers. Now, you can tell when they are strong enough that they're really going to do it by looking closely and seeing a bit of green underneath. These can sit on a cactus all spring and all summer long without producing an actual flower if they don't receive enough water. Now, along with that water, one of the things your cactus is going to also need to produce a huge flush of blooms is to receive some phosphorus fertilizer. Phosphorus fertilizer is found in higher amounts in things like rose food or camellia food or azalea food. And getting an organic food will help keep your ecosystem safe and keep your soil healthy. So I highly suggest getting a high phosphorus organic fertilizer. And I'm not here to be an ad, so I'm not going to throw out any brand names or anything like that or any links, but something at a box store or a local nursery, or I suppose on Amazon if that's your gig. But getting a high phosphorus fertilizer is going to ensure that these flowers produce actual blooms, that each one of these buds becomes a flower. Well, cool, let's cruise around and let's check out some other cactus that's going to bloom. Not all cactus produces furry buds like those ones we just saw. Those are trichocereus, and tricho actually means hair in Latin. Here's some cool buds on this cactus here. So these will each flower with enough water and food. This guy here has a whitish color on its buds. A little bit different. This here isn't a cactus at all, it's a euphorbia. But it can also bloom, push out some cool flowers. You can see this guy down here is already bloomed and put out a bunch of flowers. And what I can see from these dead flowers here is that these did not receive pollen from another cactus, so they did not produce a fruit. Whereas this one here has got a fruit forming at the base, because I did put pollen on that. Some cactus needs to be pollinated by hand, and other cactus don't. This guy seems to be putting out a bunch of buds at the tip. Now here we can see the flower starting to take shape, pushing it out. Maybe we'll try to find a fuzzy growth that just didn't become a flower from last year. So here's an example of just a dried out fuzz ball that didn't become anything. You know, it takes a lot of energy for one of these cacti to produce blooms the way they are. And sometimes the cactus will push out a lot of potential buds. We can see here tons and tons of potential buds. But that doesn't mean each one of these will actually become a flower. Some of these have already dried up because they didn't get enough water, food, energy. The amount of buds this put out was just so many, so numerous, that it wasn't able to support all of them. Obviously, it's supporting these here. I'll give you a size reference. These are about as long as my hand. And these are really close to opening up. Now that I can see the whites of this petal, I'll be checking it even this evening to see if it begins to open. And I'll be hand pollinating those. Super excited. And what I've done is I've collected pollen like I've shown in one of the previous videos, and I have that collected pollen stored. So once these open, I'm ready to pollinate them. I know some people go, oh man, this cactus is open, it's flowers, and I don't have anything to pollinate it with. Darn, what a bummer. But then they don't collect the pollen from that one. And then when the next one opens, they go, oh man, darn, this cactus is flowering, but I don't have anything else to pollinate it with. Well, you got to start somewhere. So go ahead and collect the pollen off whatever's open and save it, because that's number one. And then when something else opens up, that'll be number two, and it can receive what you've saved. And you can put that in the freezer and save it. That's where I've got mine right now. Cool, I appreciate you guys cruising along with me, checking it out. If you've made it this far, go ahead and comment flowers. Let me know you're watching and enjoying. It's almost sunset here. It's been an awesome April Fool's Day. I was tempted to put some fake flowers on some of my TBM cactus, but I'll tell you what, I really, really want one of them to bloom, and I just didn't want to jinx it. I also don't want to be little boy who cries wolf, and then people don't believe me when it really does flower. We've got some cool lobevias flowering down here. Awesome blooms. Here's one of the TBMs that I would just love to have bloom. I don't see any furry parts though, to be quite frank and honest. This guy's pushing out tons, and that's received pollen, so I can tell that it's gonna put out some fruit. Pretty exciting. Here's another cool seed-grown one. Just a little bit different than the other. Flowers a little bit smaller and squatter. I just pollinated these, so hopefully I'll get some fruit and seeds from those. And to get this intense amount of blooms, I've given this some organic guano and some seaweed extract. And that's helped it not only to push out buds like this, these are two separate pots, but to hold those buds and go all the way through to putting out flowers. And that's what we want. We don't want to just get the fluff. Here's an example of one getting the fluff. That's step one. Got to get that fluff. But step two is giving it enough water and enough nutrients, enough fertilizer to get it to push on to step three, where we can see the green or the red or the pink or whatever color flower it's going to be, the white, just to get big enough. And usually once they get to this stage here, that means it's gonna happen. You're gonna get blooms. So these are stage one right here. These could still not produce an actual flower, but these here sitting at stage two, they're doing it. They're moving forth. This is a Zelly cross. I really want it to bloom, and I don't see anything going on with it. So I'll probably foliar feed it with some organic guano, possibly put some bone meal in its actual soil, and give it a high phosphorus fertilizer. This is a cool seed grown one, Glazams, neon pink. And I can see that little spot and that little spot. Those are the stage one, step one. Those are gonna get there. Those are gonna bloom if I give them what they need and give them what they want. And that's what I want to see this Bruce's dragon do. Just gonna keep my eye on each one of those spines, and hopefully one day those will pump it out. You can see how these each have their own unique color to them. But see that amount of green? These are alive and fresh, supple, filled with moisture. So they're gonna do it for me. They're gonna bloom. This one's wondering if it's gonna. It's getting just a bit of fuzz. Just a bit of fuzz at each spot. Signs that it could go to flower, as long as I treat it right. Give it the things it needs. Ooh, this guy's got them. Lots of blooms out here. We're gonna get a big old flush, tons of flowers. I'm excited for that. And I'd be ecstatic to see one of these push out a bloom. You won't hear the end of it once I see that. Trust me, I'll be filming it and screaming about it and showing you and collecting the pollen and creating new crosses. All right, well, I hope this is helpful for you guys to push your cactus into a blooming state. You know, it's not just about getting those little tiny fuzz balls. It's about making it happen. You know, you don't want to lose that hard work. This could have been a flower last year, and it just didn't get enough juice. Juice them up, make it happen. And I'll put a link for a video on how to collect the pollen from your flowers. So you guys can go ahead and click on that link to see another video of mine on what to do once you get those cool flowers and how to create new exciting hybrids from them. All right, cheers guys. Happy April Fool's Day.